If you're here last year, you know I do a lot of things myself. All right, so introduction. Sharkbite is a cybersecurity consultant with Agio, an InfoSec strategist who has a unique technical vision, marketing, and business acumen. She is responsible for educating companies about the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape.
This is really formal.
It's what you wrote in your call for paper submission, so that's what I'm reading.
Okay.
The ever-changing cybersecurity landscape and help them build dynamic cybersecurity environment. She loves to focus on the unique challenges that face today's companies. Prior to working in InfoSec, Gina worked for over a decade as a licensed professional investigator. There she specialized in high-profile crime, sex crime, financial crime, and complex business litigation. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of Miami and will forever be an InfoSec noob.
Thank you.
And I'm Bace16. I just love talking about cybersecurity topics and uncomfortable topics and a lot of innuendo. So
we make a great team.
Totally a great team. So a little bit about Bace16's career history. She's been running a local group for 2 years where she basically talks people out of their comfort zone to overcome their challenges, both personally and in tech. And do you want to introduce yourself further? Okay. So, yes.
I got the clicker.
Yes, you have a laser pointer. Okay. So, just parental advisory real quick. This is a streaking talk. There are pictures of naked people. We did our best to censor the worst of it, but they are naked people in this talk. So, moving on. Sharkbite and Bace do not condone any illegal activity. Please respect our vague anonymity and privacy. Please respect the host. The hotel thinks we're a hacker cosplay con. Please respect the speaker in the audience. Please don't actually go streaking. I don't really want to see that. Practice on your own stuff. I got a laser pointer in my pocket, and I am going to use it, because when you practice on your own stuff, that should be assumed for any presentation that Bace16 does. Opinions expressed are our own, not our employers or any other group, and if this disclaimer seems familiar, a little bit of a watermark down there, you know where it's from. So, a little bit of the history of women streaking in sports.
Are you guys excited?
It takes a little more than that.
So we're going to start with the history of women streaking in sports. Women are able to get away with a lot. And as a straight woman, I'm able to appreciate the female body and the athletic skills it takes to pull something like that off. So let's take a much closer look and examine that history. Just kidding. We're going to be talking about Mark Roberts, the man, the myth, the streaker. So he saw a news report about a female streaker at the 1993 Rugby Sevens game in Hong Kong. And after a bet in a bar, he went naked in front of the crowd himself the very next day. And as of today, Mark Roberts has streaked 565 times in 23 countries. It's a lot of running. Like, how many miles is he getting? Oh, Lord. So, some of his career highlights include a Mr. Universe contest, a Miss World contest, the running of the bulls in Pamplona, a synchronized swimming world championship, Belfast dog show, 2006 Olympic men's curling competition, and a multitude of soccer games.
Okay, let's talk about Mark a little further. So this was Mark last year, 2018. What's interesting about this is it occurred in the Olympics. He's wearing a monkey on his junk. It's a chunky monkey with a tutu. So let's talk about this Olympic event. So it's happening in South Korea. In 2018 in South Korea, there was a lot of political stuff going on. North Korea was mad at South Korea, or I guess South Korea was mad at North Korea. U.S. was mad at North Korea. North Korea was mad at U.S. The U.S. was mad at Iran. So what did that mean? That meant there was a lot of nuclear stress that was happening. So South Korea created the most militarized security event for the Olympics. They mobilized 50,000 soldiers in addition to regular security professionals. So if you think about the Olympics in general, there are so many venues that you have to protect. Just think about that. the people, the places. Here they're worrying about missile attacks and things like that. So, and that's besides all of the IoT devices and everything else that's going on. So what does Mark Roberts do? He gets a ticket to the South Korea Olympics, and after the 1,000 meter male speed skate, he just takes off his clothes and runs out there. On this one, he's making a political statement by peace and love. But as you can see, it's interesting on how this gentleman can get through some really, really high secure events. And you probably can imagine that South Korea president was not happy. Oh, and I don't know what I just did. Okay. So how does Mark Roberts achieve his epic success? Like, how does this work? So timing. Timing is really important. And so when Mark Roberts, when you listen to his history and his background, he actually attempted a Super Bowl in San Diego in 2003, and he failed. He couldn't get past the cop. And he spent all this money to get out there and just couldn't get in. But he says that that was a blessing in disguise because, one, it allowed him to prepare for future events. What was his first course of action to prepare for the next Super Bowl that was going to be in Dallas, Texas? It was finding a lawyer to sponsor him. So he found a lawyer and literally put on his chest, like, "Better call Saul," or something like that. Some type of motto on his chest, because this lawyer said, "Just get arrested, I'll get you out, just wear my marketing material." So he became, in a way, a marketing genius after this. But this event here, which we're going to talk about, when you're thinking the Super Bowl, it's kind of like the Olympics. The Olympics has a lot of stuff going on, and the Super Bowl, there's a lot of synchrony that has to happen when you're going through. You have to go through, usually metal detectors. Sometimes you have to have pat downs, things like that. Mark Roberts, what his second course of action was to do was to get a tailor to make stripper pants, the strip off pants, and he also ordered a referee costume. So he wore in a baggy sweatshirt. So he's coming into the Super Bowl wearing oversized clothes, and he has a great personality. So he goes up to the front of the security, and the security guard was like, "Dude, what's up with those pants?" And he's like, "Oh, I have a skin disorder. Yeah, I have a skin disorder, and I need to be able to put lotion on my legs. I have some type of eczema." Security guard bought it. He thought on his feet. He was able to pivot. He was able to overcome objections. And that makes a very, very good social engineer. So he gets through the security. He walks his way down. He maneuvers his way down using his personality and wit. He gets down to the sideline, and you can see how big, a football field is. And there's usually that big wall that you have to jump down to get there. So to even get up front, you usually have those ticket people that you have to get through. So just think about all of those layers of security, kind of that defense in depth. You have your security, you have your checkpoint, you have this checkpoint, you have that checkpoint. He's getting through meticulously all these. He's making it a joke in a way. So he jumps down to the ground and then races across the field. And we're going to show you what he did. The short clip. He's epic, right? He's just epic. So thanks for going with that for me. Okay, so Mark Roberts also has to surrender his passport for English football events. He's been streaking way too many times. He's been banned from so many events. He's done all this stuff. he doesn't actually have an exit plan though. He always knows he's going to get arrested or detained. And he has spent nights in jail completely naked, and he spends a lot of money and fees and things like that. But he does not have an exit plan. But what can Mark Roberts teach us about security?
Don't wear clothes.
Don't wear clothes. Exactly. So the importance of timing and preparation is probably the biggest one. So gathering your data, knowing your target, is one of those things. For me, it's about patience. So not just about timing when you're doing anything regarding social engineering or trying to, get to an end of something, but really having the patience to do your due diligence. So let's get into detail about that. So what to do? One, I'm going to use this pointer too, is understanding your task. This is probably one of the most critical things that most people don't understand or appreciate. What does your client want? Or what is your goal? What is your payload? Those are all things you have to think about. Then you have to think what's in scope and what's out of scope. And the reason for that is you don't want to waste your time, money, and resources by going down a rabbit hole that you don't need to, per se. So, and also when you actually understand your task, it helps you with the analyzation part of it, or the analytics part. So different types of tasks. Different types of tasks. Okay, so for Mark Roberts, it's really just to run free, right? He wants to be naked, he wants to make a penny, and he wants to probably make a couple $1 million because that's how much he's raised in promotions. But for real life, a lot of times for investigation, it might be a CEO looking to understand how they're a soft target. And I'll explain that a little bit more. But it may be a company looking to acquire another company. So doing your due diligence on that company. It could be hiring and recruiting. If you're, in HR, looking at your candidates, doing your due diligence there. Of course, ethical pen testing, doing your research before you actually dive in. Become a subject matter expert on your target. So when I was an investigator, I would have dossiers on every one of my witnesses, every one. An example, it's kind of a sad example, but it's something that I did. Also, I would have dossiers on judges. I would find out what their interests were, what their families' interests were, and everything. And we would use that because we wanted to know how judges would rule on certain issues. Do they have biases? People have biases, right? So when you're looking at your target, and say you have a case that's potentially a vehicular homicide that has to deal with alcohol, and your judge has sponsored MAD, which is the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, potentially they have a bias. So you're able to recruit your judge there. That's one of my stories that I have, but every witness I would find, I would create a dossier on them. And we called it a black book, or I would use OneNote and create topics upon some topics. Most of the information I would never use, but there are some gems that really would help me win cases. OSINT can be used for bad actors too, of course. And there's also a very strong fine line. So I want you guys to realize this, between knowing that you're working towards something versus becoming a stalker. Okay? It's very easy to become OCD and think that you're going to find your information. So know when to stop and when to see a therapist. Okay? For the next one, it's collecting data. Right there. Collect all of the things, all of them. You don't know what you're going to use, and by the end, your entire topic may pivot somewhere else. And what you want to do for that is you also want to have local copies of the information just to verify that there haven't been altered or deleted or anything like that. So you want to make sure you have local copies, not just the URLs. The next part is one of the most important parts. So what separates an investigator, OSINT professional, is really that you're not a Googler. You're actually creating that analysis, okay? You're not just finding things, you're actually putting the dots together. And that's that's vital. So you have to state why the data is important to the task at hand and why it's important for your target or what it is for that initial task. You have to, it also helps you demonstrate to the client that you understood the task. I would also sort data into a useful field, a non-useful field, and a follow-up field. That's that scoping. You don't have a lot of potentially time, money, and resources. So when you're thinking about stuff that you may not, you may be running out of time because a client only has given you so many hours or so much money. It might be something where you say to a client, I have to follow up on this, or you may have to go to the courthouse for this. But that analysis makes you different from a Googler. Also, when do you have enough information for the task? So if your report is lacking, is the information that you're putting and you found, is it relevant? Is it accurate? Is it objective? Is it credible? Do you need a follow up? And then that report writing is vital. A lot of OSINT reports that I see, a lot of times don't prove the negative. And what I mean by that is if I'm a soft target, I want to know that you weren't able to find the street I was born on, or the street, all those security questions, or what high school I went to, or what that mascot was, or my date of birth. You want to also prove the negatives in the report. If you can't find out those security questions, put that you weren't able to find it. So to be effective, you must target a victim. So phase one, reconnaissance. I can't still pronounce that. Reconnaissance? Because, yes, I've been drinking. Establish trust, exploit trust. This is Jason. I also can't do grammar. Exploit trust, be able to respond to common objections, and exit, run, and depart. This next one, be a sock puppet, okay? So you want to go in stealth mode when you're researching, okay? Why? Because your target, you really don't know yet. Your target may have valuable information. So for example, say your company was hit with a phishing attack. That, you don't know the sophistication of enemy number one there. So when you're researching them, one, you may have some information like an email or whatever, and you start Googling them. You have to pay attention to what profile you're giving out there. So for example, Gina Yacone, I know if you're looking at me on LinkedIn, it shows me that you're looking at me. But other ways for bad actors to use is your browsers. I know your browsers. I can exploit what browsers you're using or your locations or things. So you want to make sure you clear your history and your cache and all your passwords and everything. You want to become stealth. You also want to create a personality that has content and has connections, that seems relevant. Now, again, here's another fine line. You also don't want to be something that would violate the law. For example, you don't want to be a lawyer because somebody may think you're practicing law without a license. You don't want to be a cop. You don't want to be an emergency EMS agent. Those are all things that you will get arrested for. Also, what's interesting about a sock puppet is when you're testifying, if you have to testify, and I've had to testify many times before, they can using a sock puppet against you. So, and what I mean by that is a lot of times you are violating the terms and services of the website that you're on because you're using an alter ego. You're not using yourself. So one, it's you were gathered the information under false pretense. And if then it still gets to a jury, that opposing counsel is going to make you look like you were a predator and that you were and they'll try to hurt your credibility. So clean your act up if you are doing open source intelligence. Use proxies, use Tor wisely. A lot of times people will say, yes, Tor is the end all be all. That's not necessarily true. The exit Tor nodes can leave fingerprints, just like browsers and things like that. So that's when you have to know your victim and kind of know where you're at with that. Yep, reconnaissance. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so collection of data. So these are some really cool, websites that it's easy. A lot of these are very common, and you're like, I already know those types of things, right? But this is one of those for doing investigations. It's also to create a repeatable method. So it's the same websites that you go to, but you go to them nonetheless with each other project that you have. But these are some of the favorites that I use. Public record, besides dumpster diving, and if you don't think that I've not been in some dumpsters, you're dreadfully wrong. But public records is probably my favorite. So public records is, if you go to the courthouse, a lot of times there are states that have stuff online, and a lot of times the OSINT professional does not go that extra mile to really go to the public record, the clerk of court, and look for public records, look for speeding tickets, look for anything, gather that intelligence there. Don't underestimate my ability to find shit out. I think you're up. Oh wait, no, just kidding. Why clear notes are important. Okay, so, sorry. So you're explaining how you got to an end result, okay? Having notes while you go, one, it leaves a lasting impression on your client. You may need to testify. And so they may ask you, how did you get to that document? And a lot of times those documents could be in secure locations. So that means that they're trying to accuse you of hacking into their network. So you have to create a clear method to that. So having clear notes is just so vital. Also, again, that if it could be deleted or altered, so notes equals credibility. Record everything. Now it's you.
So yeah, when you trust a person, you either have a friend or you have a life lesson. So trust is just a tool. It depends on how you use it. It can be used for bad purposes, for manipulation, or it can be used for influence. So manipulation exploits the trust that has been built. That's a win for the manipulator and a loss for the target. It destroys the relationship when it's found out. However, very good manipulators can keep the exploitation relationship going for long term. Think of that boss that you had that made you leave a company. They probably exploited you or destroyed trust with you, and they only managed to keep it going until you found your next job or got out of there or whatever. Influence, on the other hand, utilizes trust for good purposes, and it's a win for the influencer and a win for the target. It builds a relationship and continues the trust. When it's done in a group setting, you get a community full of active groups and conferences. Like when you have too many speakers apply for a conference and you can't take them all. So you talk them into speaking to another group or at another conference. B-Sides call for papers is open. So how can you exploit that trust? You can exploit it over the phone using vishing or smishing, contacting individuals of a company and persuading them to divulge confidential information. Online with phishing or gathering information through the use of online chat sessions, emails, or any other methods that your company may use to interact with online. This is a little bit of the cyber part of the talk. Baiting and quid pro quo.
You messed up too.
I do mess up words.
I'm not the only one.
These are both offers where baiting, that I've talked about before, refers to goods. Quid pro quo is for services. If someone is tempting you and the deal seems like a loss for them and a win for you, it's likely one of these, and they'll expect something from you later that puts you at a loss and puts the manipulator, gives them a win. There's also reverse social engineering, which is a method where the attacker can get their victims to call them back pertaining to something an attacker may have previously asked for, like the quid pro quo. Since the victim is calling the attacker, the victim is already at the attacker's mercy, and this takes a lot of reconnaissance.
Investigation.
Yes.
Research.
Persuasion. So persuading somebody to give you confidential information either by convincing them you are someone who can be trusted or by simply just asking for it. It's amazing what you can get when you just ask for it. So.
Okay, so how to develop a solid pre-texting campaign. So pre-texting. Okay, this is something that a lot of companies utilize to kind of fish their employees. It's a different way. It's also trying to get the crown jewels. So this could be administrative passwords or different vital information that the company has. So a lot of it really just stems from that long slide that I had regarding the cycle. You know, really going through and understanding your task, collecting the data, analyzing, think before you speak. Really, it's all about preparation. So planning is critical. You really, when you're trying to develop a pretext campaign with a client, you want to find out from them what their pain points are. We can put our own biases on companies and think that we know what their problems are at their office, but that might not be the case. They may have other weak links that you just don't know. So you have to ask. Listening and asking is vital. Developing a backstory, using a sock puppet is critical. Become that sock puppet. But developing your backstory, I would have 2 or 3 because usually your first one is really, really good. And if you use it on one person, and they may tell the rest of their office what that potential attack was. So you have to kind of have a couple in your back pocket, and you also need to be able to pivot. Pivoting is vital. This is overcoming objections. You have to be a good salesperson in many ways to pull off a pretexting campaign. Understand the law. So like pen test, make sure you're getting approval from your client that they know that you are pretexting their employees. So exit, run, and depart. Okay, so that's for pretexting. Get the crown jewels, get in, get the fuck out. Seriously, that is it. Mark's exit plan, Mark Roberts, his exit plan, he knows he's going to get arrested, so he's not going to depart. He is going to run for sure, but he's not going to get out. So let's go back to Mark. So this was at the Open in St. Andrews. John Daly just won the Open, and he is embracing his wife on the 18th hole. How exciting, a dream come true. This is what his success photos look like. There's Mark displaying his 19th hole. So what makes him successful? 1, his personality. A lot of the best social engineers have really good personalities and are relatable. When they talk to people on the phone, they find common interests. Sadly, they use those interests and to turn them on the side and get the information that they yield. But they utilize people's weaknesses. They use people and their vulnerabilities to prey upon them. This was Wilmington, so you could see here, he had perfect form. If that was the Olympics, he would have gotten a 10. Where is it? Right there? She's got a full frontal, yes. Okay, so Mark understands his perimeter. So if we're talking about this, Mark has no exit plan, which makes things easy, but I want you to think about your work and home. Do you have, what does your access control look like? Do you have defense in depth in terms of your physical security? So you can see here, these are the different layers. This is not the greatest image that I can find online, but it gives you that idea. What are your roadblocks in terms of your company, what you should be looking at? Now, granted, if Mark is coming into town, he's going to get through and he's going to be streaking through your reception area. It's going to be glorious. But if you think about it, do you think that Mark just runs right on the field? Or do you think he enjoys the game for a while? Do you think he enjoyed that 1,000-meter speed skate? Probably. He sat there and enjoyed being in the Olympics, enjoyed the full first half of the Super Bowl. He waited patiently for his time. Bad actors will do the same too. They will learn your perimeter. Going at it from a technical perspective, that's why it's important in terms of your outside, but in terms of your inside to also have defense in depth. So of course, machines fail. People make mistakes constantly. It's widely understood, but very undervalued. So you have to have that technical controls in place. So of course, that IDS, that IPS, your firewalls, your SIM, if you have MDR, those type of tools, endpoint protection, having endpoints, you have to think we're in a new age. And so there's a lot of stuff that Mark and other people can teach us that apply to your everyday protection of your environment. Susan?
Yeah. So like we have all been victims of some sort of social engineering. It doesn't have to be at a work event. It could be the girl or guy who wanted a free drink from your favorite bar. The social engineer's goal is to trick someone into giving them what they want by preying on basic human nature. An organization, the social engineer will take advantage of the very characteristics that make us good employees. Characteristics such as being helpful. We train our employees to ensure customer satisfaction, and as a result, employees want to be helpful, which can lead to them giving away too much information. We should not victim shame, though, but instead use it as a way to educate them in a responsible manner. Studies have shown that when people are under pressure to not make mistakes, they become too on guard and actually makes them distracted so that they end up making actually more mistakes. So this is why with your company's phishing campaign, when you have the auto replies go out for reporting a fish, they report that as a fish 15 times by the same person.
Human false positive.
Human false positives. Terrible. So you have to create a culture where management can be trusted, job responsibilities can be safely discussed, and reporting phishing ends in a lesson instead of a punishment. People are more likely to trust themselves and their gut instincts, so that leads to more fish being reported and dealt with appropriately. So education and open discussion is key. So keep the conversation open, and there's no need for clearance when you have confidence. So thank you, Mark Roberts, for inspiring this presentation.
Thanks, guys. Any questions? Any streakers? No? I do have one promotion.